The whole world is watching America stumble around like a drunk person at a dinner party, and for the first time, nobody wants to be us anymore. Assalamu alaikum, it's Sista Samilah. Honey, let me tell you what I'm observing from my vantage point as someone who studies human behavior and global dynamics, because what we're witnessing is nothing short of a real-time collapse of American soft power, and it's happening so fast that even I'm shocked at the speed of this decline. Other nations are literally standing around watching America like you'd watch a former friend who showed up to your wedding drunk, stumbling around, embarrassing themselves, and making everyone uncomfortable. I'm talking to people from around the world, and the consistent message I'm hearing is disbelief. Not anger, not hatred, but genuine shock and confusion about how quickly America has abandoned everything it claimed to stand for. They're watching this country turn on longtime allies like a person with multiple personality disorder, one day embracing democratic values and the next day cozying up to dictators. The international community is witnessing America throw away decades of carefully built relationships for the most petty and short-sighted reasons imaginable. Let me break this down for you from multiple perspectives, because what we're seeing is a masterclass in how to destroy a global reputation in record time. From a diplomatic standpoint, America has become that unreliable friend who makes promises they don't keep, shows up late to important events, and then gets mad when people stop inviting them to things. Other nations are having to develop contingency plans that don't include American partnership because they can no longer trust that America will honor its commitments from one administration to the next. Allah speaks to this phenomenon in Surah Al-Isra, chapter 17, verse 34, and fulfill every commitment. Indeed, the commitment is ever that about which one will be questioned. When you become known as a nation that doesn't honor its commitments, you lose the foundation upon which all international relationships are built. Trust, once broken, takes generations to rebuild, and America is breaking trust faster than a teenager with a new credit card. From a cultural perspective, the world is watching America abandon its own stated values in real time. This is a country that spent decades lecturing other nations about democracy, human rights, and the rule of law, only to demonstrate that these were apparently just marketing slogans rather than actual principles. The hypocrisy is so blatant that it's become a source of international comedy. Other countries are literally making jokes about American exceptionalism because the exception now seems to be competence and consistency. What's particularly devastating from a global reputation standpoint is how America is handling immigration. This is a country built by immigrants that has spent centuries marketing itself as a beacon of hope for people seeking better lives. And now the world is watching America treat asylum seekers and refugees like they're carrying plague. The Statue of Liberty might as well be holding a no vacancy sign instead of a torch, because the message being sent to the world is the exact opposite of everything America has claimed to represent. I'm hearing from tourism professionals that people are literally canceling their vacation plans to America. Think about that for a moment. People who saved money to visit Disney World, to see the Grand Canyon, to experience New York City, are changing their plans because they're not sure they'll be welcomed or safe. When your reputation becomes so toxic that people stop wanting to give you their tourism dollars, you've reached a level of international isolation that most countries only achieve after losing wars. The lack of decorum in the halls of power has become an international embarrassment. Other world leaders are watching American representatives behave like children having tantrums, seeing grown adults refuse to shake hands, witnessing public officials insult each other in ways that would get you fired from most regular jobs. The dignity that's supposed to come with representing a major world power has been replaced with behavior that wouldn't be acceptable at a local school board meeting. From a psychological analysis perspective, what we're witnessing is what happens when a nation's self-image becomes completely disconnected from reality. America has been telling itself stories about being the greatest country in the world for so long that when those stories get challenged by actual evidence, the cognitive dissonance creates this kind of erratic, self-destructive behavior. It's like watching someone who's been living in a fantasy suddenly forced to confront reality, and instead of adjusting to the truth, they're doubling down on the delusion. Allah warns us about this exact spiritual condition in Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 13. And when it is said to them, "Believe as the people have believed," they say, "Should we believe as the foolish have believed?" Unquestionably, it is they who are the foolish, but they know not. The arrogance that prevents people from learning from others eventually becomes the source of their downfall. The great divide among them folks has reached such dangerous levels that it's creating actual violence and injury. We're seeing family members attacking each other, neighbors turning against neighbors, communities splitting apart in ways that remind me of descriptions of civil wars. This internal chaos is being broadcast to the world, and other nations are watching America tear itself apart over issues that most developed countries resolved decades ago. From an economic perspective, the instability is starting to affect global markets and international business relationships. When other countries can't predict what American foreign policy will look like from one year to the next, they start making economic decisions that bypass America entirely. We're seeing the emergence of alternative trading partnerships, new currency arrangements, and international agreements that deliberately exclude American participation. What's fascinating from a historical perspective is how quickly this decline has accelerated. Empires usually take centuries to fall, but we're watching American global leadership crumble in real time. This suggests that the foundation was never as solid as everyone believed. You can't lose international respect this quickly unless the respect was based more on fear and economic leverage than on genuine admiration for your values and leadership. The beauty of this situation from a spiritual justice perspective is that Black Americans have absolutely nothing to do with any of this decline. For centuries, Black folks have been blamed for every problem in America, from economic downturns to social unrest to moral decay. But this particular disaster is 100% self-inflicted by the very people who have spent generations pointing fingers at everyone else. They can't blame Black people for alienating international allies. They can't blame Black people for abandoning democratic norms. They can't blame Black people for the lack of dignity in government institutions. Allah tells us in Surah Ash-Shura, chapter 42, verse 30, "And whatever strikes you of disaster, it is for what your hands have earned, but He pardons much." This decline is the direct result of choices made by the people in power, and for once, they can't scapegoat anyone else for the consequences of their actions. From a sociological standpoint, what we're observing is what happens when a society's mythology becomes completely disconnected from its reality. America has been selling itself a story about being a beacon of freedom and democracy while simultaneously maintaining systems of oppression and inequality. The rest of the world has been politely overlooking these contradictions for decades, but now the contradictions have become so obvious that even diplomatic courtesy can't cover them up anymore. The international community is watching America struggle with basic governance tasks that other developed nations handle routinely. Simple things like peaceful transitions of power, respectful disagreement between different groups, and maintaining consistent foreign policy have become impossible challenges for American leadership. This incompetence is being broadcast globally, and it's destroying the myth of American exceptionalism faster than any external enemy ever could. What's particularly telling is how other nations are responding to this decline. Instead of trying to help or offering assistance, most countries are simply working around America. They're developing new partnerships, creating alternative institutions, and building systems that don't require American participation or approval. This is the international equivalent of people planning events without inviting the person who always ruins the party. From a cultural analysis perspective, the world is watching America reveal that its commitment to diversity and inclusion was apparently just surface-level marketing. The speed with which anti-immigrant sentiment has taken hold, the ease with which minority rights are being rolled back, and the comfort level with explicitly discriminatory policies have shown other nations that American values were more fragile than anyone realized. The damage to America's educational and cultural soft power is particularly severe. International students are choosing other countries for their education. Artists and intellectuals are declining invitations to American institutions. Cultural exchanges are being canceled or redirected. The brain drain that America has historically benefited from is now flowing in the opposite direction, as talented people choose opportunities in more stable and welcoming societies. Allah speaks to this in Surah Al-Anfal, chapter 8, verse 53. That is because Allah would not change a favor which He had bestowed upon a people until they change what is within themselves. America had been blessed with tremendous global influence and respect, but those blessings are being withdrawn because the internal character of the nation has changed for the worse. From a strategic perspective, this decline is creating opportunities for other world powers to fill the leadership vacuum that America is creating through its own incompetence. Countries that were previously content to follow American leadership are now stepping up to provide the stability and reliability that America is no longer offering. This shift in global power dynamics will have consequences that last for generations. The irony is that this entire collapse is self-imposed. Nobody forced America to abandon its allies. Nobody made America stop honoring international agreements. Nobody compelled America to treat immigrants badly or to abandon democratic norms. These were all choices made by people who somehow convinced themselves that strength comes from isolation and that respect comes from intimidation. What we're witnessing is a textbook example of what the Quran describes as divine justice. Allah says in Surah Ar-Rum, chapter 30, verse 9, "Have they not traveled through the earth and observed how was the end of those before them? They were greater than them in strength, and they plowed the earth and built it up more than they have built it up, and their messengers came to them with clear evidences. And it was not Allah who wronged them, but they were wronging themselves." The decline we're observing is not the result of external attacks or natural disasters. It's the predictable consequence of spiritual and moral decay within the leadership structure. When you build your house on a foundation of lies, eventually the whole structure collapses. And the collapse happens faster than anyone expects because lies don't provide the same structural support as truth. From a prophetic perspective, this is exactly what happens when nations refuse to acknowledge their sins and make amends for their historical injustices. The chickens always come home to roost, beloved. The karma always completes its circle. The spiritual debt always gets collected with interest. The world is watching America learn that you cannot maintain global leadership through force and intimidation alone. You cannot command respect while abandoning the principles that earned you respect in the first place. You cannot expect other nations to trust you when you've demonstrated that your word means nothing. The beautiful thing about divine justice is that it's perfectly calibrated. America is experiencing exactly the kind of isolation and disrespect that it has imposed on others throughout its history. The same contempt that was shown to Native Americans, to enslaved Africans, to immigrant communities, to smaller nations is now being reflected back from the international community. Allah tells us in Surah Al-Qasas, chapter 28, verse 83, "That home of the hereafter we assign to those who do not desire exaltedness upon the earth or corruption, and the good end is for the righteous. Exaltedness built on corruption never lasts, and America's exaltedness was always built on the systematic oppression of others. The decline is now evident before the world, and there's no hiding it anymore. America has revealed itself to be exactly what many people always suspected it was, a nation whose values were always more mythology than reality, whose strength was always more illusion than substance, whose leadership was always more performance than principle. And the most beautiful part of this divine revelation is that Black Americans can sit back and watch this collapse with clean hands and clear consciences, knowing that for once they had nothing to do with the disaster that's unfolding. May Allah continue to expose truth and deliver justice in His perfect timing.